Unfortunately, I didn't know about myself that I can't handle drugs or alcohol. Guidance probably came in a way that I wasn't able to receive it. At my age of 15, he started dealing it. So meth was always at home. There was a lot of shit. Like, I think just even like not even having my mum or dad around as a teenager for when I needed them. And then my crime started to get worse. I'm fully immersed in this, in the drug game in Australia. Whilst I was in, that's when they bring in the 501 law. So I was inside when it kicked off. I didn't want to use, but I just couldn't stop. Once I picked up again, I couldn't stop again. You know what I mean? Like, I was so powerless over it.
My name is Nicole Young, and this is the Rock Your Bottom podcast.
Hi guys, just a quick PSA. I just wanted to jump on and say a massive thank you so far for all of the love and the support. Please, if you are enjoying the content, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Yes, I'm talking to you. To keep this going, it needs your support. If the love keeps coming, I promise to keep bringing some incredible stories to your screens. I hope you enjoy this next episode. Welcome to the Rock Your Bottom podcast, Tony. It's a real privilege having you sitting opposite me this morning, and thank you for coming and sitting down to share a little bit of your story.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to be here. Yep.
Yeah, you feeling ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to just start off by highlighting who you are and where you come from?
So my name's Tony Hudson. I am 37 years old. Born and raised here in Auckland. So grew up in central Auckland. However, my mum's Māori and my dad's Pākehā. And so my mum comes from a small place called Te Taketake. And my dad's whānau is in Whakatane. I grew up here in Auckland, but however, in holidays, I spent time going between my grandparents for holidays. So that's a bit about me.
Oh, cool. Awesome. And what was your substance of choice, and how clean and sober are you today?
The thing that really brought me to my knees, I guess, was my methamphetamine. Like, that's really, I was quite powerless over that.
Yeah.
So definitely meth.
Yeah.
I am clean and sober 5 years, 10 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me about your experience with mental health and addiction. Where did it all start for you?
I guess mental health and addiction, those words were very foreign to me. I guess I guess for myself, like, I grew up speaking Te Reo Māori before English. Like, I learned to read and write in Te Reo Māori. And so, like, English was very basic to me. I'm not too sure. I'm just trying to understand why addiction or mental health wasn't really something that was brought up in my household or in my community. But I guess for myself, I'm going to say from the age of 12 was when I started to experience substance abuse. However, it was very normal from where I came from in my community. Like, my father would drink every day. There would always be beers in the fridge. Yeah. He also used marijuana. Same thing, my mum. I come from on my mum's side. That's when I still hadn't heard of addiction. Like, for me, it was just using drugs, or like,
it was what it was.
It was what it was. It was, and alcohol. Like, alcohol was very normalized. Like, you grow up and, your dad gives you your first sip of beer when you're young, and it's kind of cool, and I did the same thing with my children. It's like, and I think that so alcohol to me was never going to be problematic, or never was drug use. Unfortunately, I didn't know about myself that I can't handle drugs or alcohol. And so I guess for myself, it started when I was around age 12, smoking marijuana, and then drinking. And then from that, and probably from the age of 13, I was daily smoking marijuana, drinking twice a week.
Yeah.
Binge drinking, going parties, blackout, all that sort of stuff. And then I think methamphetamine got introduced to myself at the age of 14. Same thing, just around environment. And yeah, but nothing was off the cards, you know, like I guess addiction, I never knew anything about addiction or mental health. And I guess mental health, like if I go to speak about mental health, we're talking about what's going on inside the brain. And I think that up until my whole life, I didn't know what was going on really for myself. You know, like I think that if I was going to talk about my emotions, like the only thing that I ever felt was like sad, angry, happy, I guess grief when we go through loss. But, you know, I didn't know that I was feeling anxious or depressed or I just wasn't in touch with, and it wasn't okay to speak about your feelings. As we know, growing up here in NZ, it's quite a common thing around men that speaking about your feelings is not okay, or wasn't normalized as it is today. And so so I just internalized things, you know. And so that was probably, I think that's my sort of output on addiction and mental health.
Talk to me a little bit more about, you know, you said that you started using substances at the age of 12, and then you said that methamphetamine entered the picture for you at the age of 14. You know, was that something that was happening at home, or was that something that was happening with friends?
It's a bit of a twist.
Yeah.
And so I guess pretty much my whole childhood, my mum and dad were broken up. They split, you know, and they divorced, and like I'd spend the week with my mum's house and in the weekend at my dad's out west.
Yeah.
And so then my brother died when I was 12.
Dude, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know, my brother died, and Buzzy was really buzzy that my mum and dad got back together.
Oh wow!
After years of being divorced, and it was fucking twisted.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess as a 12-year-old, you don't even know what's going on, you know. So they got back together, and then my mum and dad moved out, and like left us kids to be raised for my sister. So my sister would have been, I was 12 or 13. Not straight away, they didn't move out. So they moved out by the time I was like 13 or 14.
Were you the youngest?
No, I've got a little sister.
Oh wow!
And so they left us at home with my sister, who was the king of the house. And so we lived in Central, and so there was no boundaries. I could do whatever I wanted. So I lived at home with and we were a foster home as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, we had foster kids coming in and out. But and I don't know what was happening there. But so I had my sister, my brother-in-law, I had my two cousins, and I had my stepbrother, who was a foster boy, and then I had myself, and there was no adults, and we were all under the age of 16 in the house.
Wow.
And it was like that up until I was 18, or like, you know. And so we could do anything we wanted, and so there was no parents around. So I guess, you know, marijuana was smoking daily at home with everyone at home. And when it came to drugs, when I got onto meth, it was just something because I finished school at the age of 13. And I went to work. And where I worked, there was quite a lot of, so we were in the courier industry.
Yeah.
All around us were like members, like gang members, and like ex-cons. You know, there was us there, like you didn't really have to have a license. It was pretty dodgy. And so, you know, and I guess I got first introduced to meth through my work environment. And at the age of 14. Yeah. And so it wasn't, I guess for me, when meth became more, was my older stepbrother, who through foster, he was Samoan, and his brother was like quite a career criminal. At my age of 15, he started dealing it.
Yeah.
So meth was always at home. And so, and made it look cool, like I remember him coming back when it was like, very expensive, and he'd have a lot of it. And then I would just go home to it, and there's no adults around and I could do whatever I wanted. And so then I would use with my brother. But I could also I didn't want to be I didn't want to be a drug addict, although that drugs and alcohol was normalized for me, I wasn't I still had ambition and goals as a kid. Like, I remember wanting to have a beautiful family, own my house. We come from my mum and dad had split. There was always dramas at home. And there was never the most money, and so I wanted to have a life where I guess I used to see on TV.
Yeah. Totally.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I also knew what the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
Although alcohol and drugs was normalized, and same as crime. I guess for me, my story is a lot around crime as well.
Yeah.
But I still knew the difference between right and wrong, because although on my mum's side, crime and drugs and alcohol was very normalized. My mum's brothers, gang members, my mum, all my whānau, gang related, and prison was very normalized. But then on my dad's side, although my dad was very different to his whānau, he was with my mum. My mum's pretty Māori, and but he had a loving whānau, and so as I said in the start, that I'd go to whakataane to be with my grandparents, with my dad's whānau. They almost I went from a total different world. So I'd go there where I had to be asked to be excused to get off the dinner table, and they loved me, and they they seen that being able to read te reo, all in te reo Māori wasn't just going to serve me. So they taught me how to spell and read in English properly. And however, I had no direction. I'm not too sure. I can't actually remember being, I guess, given guidance as a kid. The only guidance I guess I remember, if I was to be frank, was if I'm getting a hiding, or and getting yelled at, getting abused, or for doing something, don't do that. But that, I guess as a child, you're not also looking up and saying, hey, I need some guidance, whānau. Can someone guide me? And so although there was meth and marijuana, marijuana is just a part of life, with our spots and buckies and all that, putting out money to give it to get the next tinny as kids, Yeah. And then, as I said, then my house was like a home where anyone can come and live, and so I quite often always had my boys living with me, and so, we all would come together, we would eat together, we would starve together. But I still wanted more in life, I was quite naturally ambitious. I could sell ice to an Eskimo. I was a hard worker. I sort of knew how to get shit done from an early age, and I think that's something my mum installed in me, because my mum come from nothing, all my early life she was in and out of prison, and she managed to work her way up and get back on her feet, and so I guess I didn't and when I could see the boys using P, I wanted more of that, I wanted to have a beautiful life, and so I almost knew right and wrong, so I didn't really go balls to the wall straight away.
Yeah.
I'd dabble.
Yeah.
But however, marijuana was a daily thing for me, alcohol. And then every now, probably weekly, I'll get on get on the P. But this is as a 15-year-old, you know what I mean? And and it was very expensive, and I guess my brother had money to make as well, and like he wasn't just giving it out. Yeah, so.
What impact did this all have on you as a early teenager, you know?
As like I said, I had no guidance.
Yeah.
Like, well, I guess guidance probably came in a way that I wasn't able to receive it.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I just lost my brother. No boundaries at home, able to do whatever I wanted. Being raised from my sister who, you know, she was young and pregnant, had her own responsibilities trying to hold the house. She done great. She done amazing, you know, like, but as the impact on a teenager for me, I guess I was pretty rebellious, you know, like I started getting arrested from early. And
when was the first time you got arrested? What did that whole experience look like?
Well, I'm gonna say 11 Pack and Save, you know. Got caught stealing at Pack and Save.
Yeah.
The story is so funny, but you know, it was very normal. And I guess I guess the law was not welcomed in our family, you know, like in our culture. And so and so same thing, you know, I didn't like the police. I didn't think they were really helpful, you know. I think we grow up to I think maybe normal people grow up to think that the police is normal, are helpful, are good people, you know. Like, as I remember, like my mom, you know, they arrested my mom, you know, when we got pulled over with my mom, you know, we were starting to lie from a young age, pretending we got our seatbelts on, and mum said, don't say nothing, you know. And so I guess, so I started to get arrested. Probably my first time was at the age of 11 from Pack and Save. And then it just went on and went on. Like, you know, I think at the age of 13, I was robbing dairies, and just through school, like cigarettes, and then same thing, getting caught, you know, getting chased, Pack and Save, and then liquor stores, and then ag robs, you know, like, and so it just went on and went on. Like, if I was to do things differently, I wish that someone, because I finished school at the age of 13, I wish someone said, bro, I'm going to put you in this trade and you need to finish it. You know what I mean? Like, or like, you know, go back to school.
Yeah.
But I guess everyone was probably saying it, but I couldn't listen.
And you weren't to know
at
that age as well, you know. You weren't to know that all of that was going to take you to where it did take you.
Yeah,
you know?
I didn't. And,
yeah.
And so, it really, I guess it didn't really set me up for a positive future, you know. Like, there was actually, as I went on later on to learn a bit more what was going on for myself, there was a lot of shit. Like, I think just even like not even having my mum or dad around as a teenager for when I needed them, you know. Like, I think I grew up with my mum, and my mum, like, you know, I was a mum's boy. And so, like, you know, I think that my mum was always, as I said, she built her way up to something. But however, that meant that she was everywhere, you know. And so I guess, and I was probably with her, but I just really was trying to get my mum's love or my mum's guidance. And my dad, you know, my dad was sort of like the discipliner. Like, he'd come over and we'd get in trouble because probably mum couldn't handle us.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I didn't really like, the words that came out of my dad's mouth were quite piercing, you know. Like, he'd just have to look at us and I'd be like, fuck.
Yeah.
You know, so I didn't really trust him. And that went on. I didn't really trust my dad my whole life up until really, I ended up in prison. And then, you know, I started going to prison. And then, and then I guess as I started to grow up and sort of reflect the man, this fella's always been there for me, you know, through my dark days.
What did the process look like, you know, through, I guess, your teenage years and 20s? Where did your addiction end up taking you?
I got hooked on the meth.
Yeah. What age?
18.
Okay.
But I guess to cut, I got in this beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
At the age of 15.
Tell me about it.
first proper relationship, met her at a party, you know, like as I go to parties as young, we'll rock up in a van, like 10 deep. And I, one of my friends was dating one of her friends. And as I said, I was quite ambitious and I've always been quite a charmer and all that sort of jazz. Like I'm a charming manipulator, you know. I knew how to sort of get my needs met in the world, and so I met this girl, and she came from a normal life, you know, like and we started dating, and we were together for like 3 years, and like I ended up like living with her. So from the age of 13, between 15 and 18, I had some beautiful guidance. You know, their family took me in. I'd go to their batch and cook speech in the Coromandel, like we'd go around holidays, and like you know, the dad had a trade, and like, you know, they were quite and they lived in a rich area, they lived in a beautiful house, and it was just like far, and we had a good relationship. So from the age of 15 to 18, like I had almost everything I wanted from a young age, and I was really into graffiti, you know, like I started tagging. Like tagging was my whole youth.
Did you get in lots of trouble for it? You know.
Oh yeah, I got my first day on my 17th birthday, when you can get arrested and taken to the police station. I got done for willful damage.
Yeah.
You know, tagging at the train tracks, and so but tagging, it was such a culture here in NZ.
Yeah.
Especially here in Auckland, like, you know, and so like I would tag. Although the reason why I'm saying this, I had this beautiful relationship, but I was still a bit of a I was still mischief.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I was still like, I'll have this beautiful home with my partner, with my girlfriend's family, who are like really lovely, and all their whānau got welcomed in. This like little Māori boy from like the hood. And then, but then I'd go home to just around the corner to where all my brothers and my sisters was, and I'd go there, and then next minute we're going out doing egg robs, or like, you know, like quite often somebody keep drawing me home, and I'd go home and I'd start playing up, or we'll go out tagging, and then next minute I'm off the rails again. So my addiction was playing out hard out, but I didn't know it was, you know. I was always just like trying to make something from nothing.
Yeah.
From a young age, you know, I could see that, okay, if I like my girlfriend, I think when she was 17, enrolled like when I was 17, she was a year older than me. She went on to like study to become a lawyer. So she was going to university, and her dad was saying to me, Tony, you need to become a tradie. So, you know, like you should, here's the phone book, ring up every builder, you know. And like I said, it was really guidance, but I still, you know, my heart was still at home. I'd still go home at least 3 days a week, use not meth, because I started to become like, I started to see the effects that it was having on my friends, my brother, you know, and I was just like, fuck. And I was actually quite judgmental towards it. I was actually like, man, I ain't, bro, you need to get off that shit. You know what I mean? And you know, do something with your guys' self. And it wasn't until I broke up out of that relationship. So when I broke up with my partner, I had my own franchise. Like at the age of 18, I had my own career franchise, so my own vehicle. We had a nice house in Maraetai. And we had, I had my dream cars, you know, like I was quite into cars growing up as well. But then I moved straight home. You know, I went straight to the pit, and then before I knew it, I was using meth. So before, I'd use meth every now and then with the boys, whatever. But I went home, and then I started using, I was single. I was, I guess, grieving. I didn't know. And I started using meth daily, and I started to lose everything really fast. You know, I hooked straight on really fast.
Did your methamphetamine addiction sort of go from one length to the next almost instantaneously? Like, did it become an everyday thing quite quickly?
Well, yeah, but because I was a tagger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's this huge culture of taggers, like, and I was like, I put in a lot of mahi. I put in a lot of work to like be a tagger. You know what I mean? My whole crew. And so like that was the thing. But anyway, what I'm saying is that the community of taggers ended up being peaheads.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like we all went from going to parties to now people are going to jail, and people are like hard out on the P, and there was this culture where, you know, it was quite cool to be a P-head, to be on
Yeah.
P. And so, I just slipped straight into it. So I same thing, you know, I split up with my partner, all my friends that I'd been, they were all doing it, and I
Yeah.
just slipped straight into it. And so, I guess at first it was like, yeah, using on payday, or by, you know, trying to, which payday was every week. So using probably every week, you know, and yeah, and it definitely became unmanageable.
As you were getting older, was meth getting more expensive as well, less expensive, or
I
has
just
it sort
remember
of-
it being like, you know, just very expensive. Like
Yeah.
I do know, like it was like when I was first used it, you know, I think they were saying it was like $1,000 a gram, like back in 2000 and I don't know what year, when I was like 13, 14.
Yeah.
They were like, fuck, you know. And then my brother, I think if we were lucky through my brother, I think maybe $8.50 for a gram, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't know. He's such an angler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like, and you know, we didn't have scales and shit back then. It was like just the starting of it. And so was trying to just like live this beautiful life. Like I was in love. You know, like I thought this chick was amazing. We you know, she was my first love, and like her friends was like my friends was with her friends, and you know, like we had communities, but you know, it was like, and so when that split, I changed everything. I just went back to the boys. You know, I went back to the boys, and everyone was smoking P. You know, a lot of people, broke people that didn't have P money to smoke P. But a lot of people they were on, and I guess for myself, like I was still quite ambitious. Like I was still able to. I had a job from the age of 14, you know, and so yeah, so I was able to afford it, and then I, you know, just started. I guess I learned the art of hustle from my brother, you know, because he was onto it, and I'll be like, rather than buying a quarter of a gram for like whatever, I can't remember. I don't even know if it was quarters, it was just halves or some shit. It was just expensive.
Yeah.
How can I smoke and not have to pay for it? You know, going ins, and then, you know, then we started getting hotels and all that, you know, it just comes with the life. And then before I knew it, like we were like just doing anything to smoke P. But I still had a job, you know, and so, but it was becoming unmanageable. Like, you know, like my friends that like were through my partner, you know, my friend circle through there, they sort of started to distance themselves from me because they seen actually you're like hanging with the boys and you're going off the rails, and I didn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? I was just like, you know, I was proud to be, well, I was just doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so, 18, full blown addicted to P, smoking weed, drinking with the boys. You were definitely outside of culture, outside of the norms, and it was quite proud, you know. By then, now we're popping cars. People were breaking into cars and selling Valentines and all that sort of shit. And same thing, we're popping cars or whatever, just doing stuff what people do.
When did the legal system come into play? When did you start getting sort of, you know, I guess arrested for some really serious stuff?
Like I was always getting charged with serious stuff because, you know, like from the age of like, I'm going to say 15, you know, like my brother-in-law's mates, we were all a gang, you know what I mean? And so what was very normal was like going out and beating people up, taking their stuff. They used to call it stocking, you know? And so from the age of 15, like I got put into child SIFs, you know, child youth services, because I got done for ag robs. But then it's the same thing. As I became an adult, I got charged with ag rob on a liquor shop, where the shop attendant got really injured. And same thing. Then I'm going through the court system. So the court system has always been a part of my life. But I guess really what it really started to make an impact was when I moved to Australia.
How old were you when you moved to Australia?
Not long after 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know?
Tell me about it.
Oh, it's a buzzy story. So that girl that I was with, before we broke up, we had booked a cruise. I was going on a cruise ship, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's how onto it her whānau were, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuck, they're going on cruises and shit. None of my family had, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, wow. And so, you know, I still wanted to be with her, but I think, you know, when we broke up, she like caught her break. She was just like, this dude's up to no good, you know. And so we'd paid for this cruise, and she goes, should we still go? We came up to an agreement. Yeah, we'll still go on this cruise together. Well, I ended up getting kicked off that cruise ship. 3 days into it, I got kicked off it for, I guess I was abusing her on the cruise ship. You know, I used, before I went on the cruise ship, went on there like, I was an idiot, you know, like I was a proud pea head. And so I went on this cruise ship, and then same thing, it was like, just got on alcohol, just smashed alcohol every day because it was so cheap. And then anyway, at the age of 18, I ended up getting kicked off a cruise ship in Vanuatu.
Wow.
And I got left in Vanuatu. And so for me to fly back to New Zealand, because they just kicked me off and left me on the island. But for me to fly to New Zealand, I had to, they put me on Air Vanuatu, and I had to do a swapping flights from Vanuatu to Australia. And I just got off in Australia. I had fun over there. And I went there, and it was the same thing. You know what? I jumped off, like, as I said, like I was a part of this pea culture. And then I got off in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. And like the drugs was just way more. You know, one of my cousins, she worked at a brothel.
Yeah.
And she had so much money.
Yeah.
You know, I come from New Zealand where it was just like, man, you know, like we'll be lucky to buy a half and whatever. And then we had to share that between whatever, you know, it was very early days. And then I went over to her, like my cousin just be like, what have you been up to, cuz? And I'll be like, not much. And I'll be like, can you get any stuff? And they called her ice over there, and she was just like, yeah, I'll go get us a gram. You know what I mean? It's just for me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh, wow. And so I moved to Australia. I ended up staying in Sydney. P was, you know, no matter where I went, I guess I could always find it. And although I did not think that it was a problem, you know, but I was embarrassed of it because, you know, it was quite, you didn't want to be known as a pea head. So I guess, I used to quite like try and maintain that I had all my shit together to try, you know, I was still trying to, I guess, crack it in life. You know, I guess I forever, like, although I was just running around surviving, I really wanted to like have a beautiful life. And but I guess I just didn't know. So same thing, but you know, I guess I wanted to have this beautiful life, but then I also love using drugs and alcohol. And so, well, alcohol wasn't really problematic, you know, because it was normal. Although we'd get drunk and then we'd get into fights and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it was like, ice was like, they called it ice in Aussie, you know, ice was like, yeah, something that like I just really loved and I couldn't stop.
It brought you to your knees.
It brought me to my knees, like 100%, you know, like from the age of like 14, it had its grips on me, you know, but I was also battling with that demon, you know what I mean? Like I was like, I'll use drugs like to be a part of, to feel good.
Yeah.
However, like when I'm feeling, the other half of me is just like, Tony, you know, like to have a beautiful life, you need to work hard. You know, you need to make right decisions and all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I battled a demon my whole life. You know, like I guess I was battling. And so I'm in Australia, and same thing. Like, you know, like I said from the start, I could sell ice to Eskimos, or I could sell myself. And so I think straight away I got a job. You know what I mean? I got a job I got a job, and thanks to my uncle. You know, my uncle was just like, Tony, back then, you know, there was not really seek. You know, like it's like, bro, we're gonna take you and you're gonna knock on doors. And I walked in and I cracked this job straight away, you know, and so I'm at working, and then one of the boys, I'm like, I overheard a conversation, and I'm just like, bro, talking about shards or something, you know? And so I was just like, you know, and I was just like, hey. And then before I knew it, I was scoring my own pee, just taking it home, then I went back to the same cycle, like using every payday, using like most weeks in the weekend. And then I started to tarnish like my cousins' partners, you know, like my whole whānau in Sydney. They weren't really big ice users, meth users. But I went over there, like there was only me and my girl cousin that would use meth. But then, you know, before I know it, I had like all my normal cousins, their partners all on the gear, and so and it became quite problematic for their whānaus. They were like doing great before I moved there, and then all of a sudden we're fucking smoking meth all weekend, and you know, they're not going to work, and then, you know, and then resentments were building, and so I started to burn all my bridges. Yeah. You know, then I started taking sick days, and from, you know, relationships, and I jumped into relationship. Then I got my partner on the gear, and then it was no matter where I went, like I definitely always found meth, and I struggled with it, but I try to hide it, you know. And quite often, like when it spell out, they'll be like, fucking, to my whānau, you know, they'll be like, Tony's on the gear, and I'll be like, hey. You know, you know, and I'll try and hide it, like try and lie, because I was embarrassed, you know, like I guess I was still trying to like hold this facade that I'm okay. Well, then I burned all my bridges in Sydney. I moved to Queensland. And same thing, you know, just with whānau, I guess I end up just getting on meth. Same thing, get a job, buy meth. But then I started getting introduced to bigger quantities through my cousin's partner. Like he was just like, bro, you put in this much, you get an 8 ball, you know, get a 1/4 of an ounce, and then you can smoke all this. And so and then I started to watch Underbelly. There was this show called Underbelly. Fuck, I was hooked. And I used to watch like Carl Williams, and I'm like, that's me.
That's it.
You know what I mean? Straight up. And like, you know, I was already like, I'm still young. I'm only like 19, but I'm like hooked. I'm like, I'm going to be.
Did Underbelly give you ideas and stuff as well?
Oh my God. You know, but like I was already down on that life. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, you know, and so like I was just like, and the same thing, like, you know, wherever I was, like even in Sydney, like I was, you know, we were doing earns, like we were robbing shops, we were robbing liquors, just whatever. And it was because I felt crime was normalized for me growing up. And so I'd go there or like whatever, or just I was always down. And then same thing in Queensland, you know, I was just down for the cause. Still no guidance, you know what I mean? Like I needed some guidance from a young age. And then but so watching Underbelly, I'm just like, wow, this is me. You know, how do I do this? And you wouldn't believe it, like I had this whole investment plan. And I always had an investment plan. Same thing as young, like we were like at the age of like 16, 17, 18, we were like we were robbing like sports shops, and we were like robbing car yards, and you know, and so we were always quite entrepreneurial, you know. And it's the same thing, like, you know, we're gonna do this earn, we're gonna turn this in, we're gonna buy ounces of weed, and then we're gonna, you know, and we're gonna crack it, then we're gonna buy guns and all this sort of shit, you know. And then the same thing, like I'm like had this main job, you know, like really good at getting jobs, had this main job, started smoking ice with the people at work. And then just trying to survive, you know, like I'm probably 19 now, like in Queensland. And lost my job, you know, someone offered me some money. Someone's like, bro, if you help me steal this parcel, I'll give you some cash for it, you know. And I'm just like, fuck, we're smoking gear tonight.
Yeah.
All good, you know. So that'll, you know, I'm like, sweet. Got caught, lost my job. And then so when I like had this badass car over in Australia, like no guidance, like at the age of like 19, financed this like $30,000 car. Never ever had like paid off anything in my life, you know. 1 month into owning it, I like fell asleep at the wheel, crashed it, no insurance, nothing. And so anyway, I'm like, this $30,000 car, and I'm like watching Underbelly, and I'm like, I'm gonna sell that car and I'm gonna invest in gear, buy me a dog, and then, you know, and then I'm away. And then sure enough, sold my car, my $30,000 car for like $1,000 to the wreckers, went straight to my cousin. And I'm like, cuz put me on, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just going to be a full-time drug dealer.
Oh my God.
And then, it, you know, and same thing. And then started, and sort of like just started aiming for that, you know? And then, that I wasn't successful at the start. You know what I mean? Like I think it was actually a shambles. Ended up just smoking what I bought. But I went through a period where I couldn't get a job, and so but same thing, and just trying, you know, like battling with wanting to be amazing in life. You know, like battling with wanting to have a family. You know, like buy a house, have a life that I didn't have. You know, like. And I went from relationship to relationship, you know, and so every time I was in a relationship, I was just like, you know, this is my chance. I'm gonna be amazing. I want to have a family and all that. And then that'll fall apart, and I'm just like back to fuck the world mode. Am I allowed to swear on here? Yeah.
Yeah.
5 later.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I moved to Queensland, and then I found big quantities. As I said, my cousin introduced me to larger amounts. I then started to work alongside some like really, I got this job working with my family, and I got introduced to this like quite big drug dealer that was just like, here you go, bro, bam, you know. And then from then I was working, but also selling drugs. My main clients was like my family, because there was so much of them, and then also like my workmates, and I became really quite good at it, and so before I knew it, I guess at the age of 21, I was like, fuck working, I ain't got time to work, I just want to sell drugs. And now my circle around me are like drug dealers, you know, and so they're like and in Australia, I guess, you know, they were like glorifying like the life. Everyone was on motorbikes and everyone was on this sort of stuff. And from then I was just like, okay, that's us, brothers, you know. And then I started to go to prison. I started to like get raided, you know, like I started to get done with stolen motorbikes or police chases or whatever. And then, you know, first prison sentence, second one, and they just keep getting bigger, and then until I got deported. But one thing I knew, that when every time I would go to prison, that was the only time that I was really stopped off all substances. You know, because even though out in the community, like I guess from the age of like 18, I was quite frequently, you know, like my whole adult life, you know, I was dependent on meth. I might be able to go a couple of days without it, you know, to sort of catch up or whatever, but then I would end up just repeating the cycle. And that went on, and then as the snowball just started to crumble, then I started to go to prison. And then first time I'm feeling like substance free, not just meth, like, you know, like marijuana and alcohol. And I was just like, and I remember feeling like myself again, that I hadn't really felt in a long time, like I'll be in prison, although, you know, you're in prison. Sorry, you're in prison and you like got this mask on and all this sort of jazz.
Yeah.
But you know, like I was just like, I had natural energy.
Yeah.
It'd been a long time since I had natural energy, or I could do stuff without getting high. But then same thing, then I'd get out, you know, at first my prison sentences was for like, you know, possession, failing to, you know, just very minor crimes.
How long would you stay in prison for with these
Like 4 months.
Yeah.
You know, like just very minor crimes. And then I'd get out. But while I'm in prison, I'm like, and I've got a family at home now.
Yeah.
But while I'm in prison, I'm like, man, I'm gonna get out and fucking this. I'm not doing this shit again, and I'm gonna just go back to like being a good dad and all this sort of jazz. And then I'll get out, and then I'll be like, maybe last 3 or 4 days, and then I'll plug straight in with my community, and then the same thing, you know, man. We're reloading, and then same thing. I'm fully merged. I ain't a dad. I wasn't a partner. I was just like, my life was unmanageable. Like, and then my crime started to get worse. And so, you know, same thing. I'm fully immersed in this, in the drug game in Australia. And then, same thing, go to prison. I ain't gonna use again. Feels amazing, you know. But starting as I'm getting older now, it's starting to get a bit harder, you know. I'm like, oh, I'm not even that old, but like I'm like 22, 23. I've got a baby at home.
Yeah.
Then also the second time I was in prison, I found out I was having another baby in prison from, you know, my partner at the time was pregnant, and I was just like, fuck. And you know, and I'd listen to her, and she'd be like, bro, you need to sort your shit out and come home. And I'd be like, that's us. Then I'd get out, and then I'd be like, same thing, you know, they pull, like I didn't know how to stop properly out in the community. And then I think I got out when I was like 23, and I was out for about 9 months. And I ended up getting charged with a bigger charge, where I got sentenced to 5.5 years. And so, but you know, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so, but at that time I was fully merged, you know, I was doing everything, like, and so I was just, in prison was normal now, you know, like getting arrested and all that, which I guess I was just like, fuck, it is what it is. And so I went to prison, but at this time I was in longer, you know, and I guess that for me, like for myself, it wasn't really until I was in prison for longer than a year that I actually could like properly reflect on what I was up to, you know, and like, you know, when I was in for, I only ended up doing 2 years before I got deported. But like, I guess when all my other stints were like baby, you know, were only little stints. And so I'm like, oh, I'm not going to use again. But then, you know, I didn't really feel any pain. But I guess when you're in for like more than a year, when I done a couple of years, I was like missing Father's Day, missing Christmases. I went in at 25 and I got out at 28, you know, and so and I started to feel some pain. And I'm thinking, fuck, bro, what am I up to? You know what I mean? Like, I'm in here for that shit or that shit, you know? Like, and then I started to do the maths, and I'm like, you know, I'm in here for like $6,000 or some shit, you know? Like, just stupid. And then all I wanted to do was just to do my time and go home to my family. And so, whilst I was in, that's when they bring in the 501 law. So I was inside when it kicked off. It was like 2015.
That would have been massive.
Yeah, well, fuck, it was a surprise.
Yeah.
And like these heaps of us New Zealanders in prison in Aussie. And so, yeah, no, it caught me. But you know what? I still had hope. I'm like, man, people are getting deported, but not everyone is, you know? And so I'm like, man, I might be one of those ones that can get away with this.
Were you feeling all those emotions like fear and stuff? Because you had babies at home. You had
I had 2 babies at home, yeah.
Fuck.
Well, to be honest, I was just hopeful.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
I was hopeful. Like I was in prison. I'm just like, man, I tried every way to get out this one because I'm like, man, if I can get out, I've got a better chance of beating it out in the community. Well, just getting out.
Yeah.
But they just wouldn't let me out. You know, I fucked shit up so bad that they
Yeah.
wouldn't let me out. But anyway, I didn't beat it. You know, some people got out. But so this is the first time I started to hear about recovery.
Mhm.
People were like, you know, whilst I'm in prison, I'm watching people get out, go to rehab. That was their out.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, I don't know anything about rehab at all. I guess the only thing I know, like in New Zealand, like no one in my family went to rehab, or if they did, I never knew about it. It wasn't normalized. And so, but the only thing I heard about rehab was when people were getting bailed to rehab, and then the culture in prison was like, oh, the boys are over there and they're all doing all right, you know, they're pushing and doing all this sort of stuff. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I'm not hearing stories of John went there and changed his life and he's fucking doing amazing. Straight up, because that probably would have hit me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead, I'm hearing the boys over there, you know, they're doing all good. They're doing this and that. And I'm like, you know, fucking whatever. Just, you know, I'm not going to rehab. I'm going home.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm getting out, I'm going home.
Yeah.
And then, before I knew it, I knew I was flagged. And then I was like getting sent from prison to prison to prison. And then I was coming up for parole. And as I said, like, you know what, all I want to do is get back to my family. You know, I'd had a bit of reflection and I'm like, fuck, you know, like I'm an idiot, you know, like, but I'd done no programs ever, you know, like even in prison, I was like, you know, I was unaware of programs that can help you change.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I didn't even believe that I didn't know I was an addict or that I had a problem. I just thought I was stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I ended up going up for parole, and then I applied for parole. So in Australia, you have to apply for parole.
Okay.
And as soon as I got applied for parole, I got sent to court through AVL, and it was Borderlink, Australian Border Force, you know, immigration. And they're like, you know, and I remember this day vividly, and they said to me, Tony, just so you know, we just want to let you know we're cancelling your visa. And I was just like, fuck, I knew it was coming. But I was fearful because my partner, she was Australian.
Yeah.
We had no plans of ever coming back to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And she was at home with 2 kids, and you know, I guess that I was like, she's like, Tony, I guess if I was getting deported, I was uncertain of what she was going to do. And so I remember this call. I'd not been in this new prison for long, so I wasn't around my people, you know. And I rang her and I was just like, yeah, hey, I just got off the phone to ABF, and I'm getting deported.
What did she say?
She hung up on me.
Oh,
She's
funny.
fucking, and I was just like, fuck. And all I needed to hear at that time was like, bro, you're gonna be all right. I got you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Instead, she hung up on me, you know, and I'm not having a go at her.
Yeah.
You know, fuck. It's my fault. I'm in prison. You know, and so okay. I remember going to my cell that day, and I done it a bit tough. And then I just had to roll on with it.
Tony, being a 501 deportee, within your story, where was your rock bottom moment that finally, I guess, led you to change?
You know, I guess my main rock bottom was being prison. Like, you know, my rock bottom was prison.
Yeah.
Not because like I was in prison, but because like I was contained. like I was away from my children, and like, you know, and like I wanted this to be a great father. I wanted to give my kids this mean life, and you know, and like all this sort of stuff. And I think being in prison, like watching my kids, like, you know, it was quite like, I remember like watching my son, like watching me get sent to prison, like at a courthouse, and him, like, as I'm walking away, getting him yelling out, "Dad." But I think for me, like, rock bottom was probably, you know, watching the impact on my family, watching the impact of my shit on them, watching my kids struggle, you know, missing first days of school, missing all those milestones that I longed for to be there for. So that's my, like, when I think of my rock bottom, like, you know, I can definitely remember being unlocked by a security guard every day. I can still I can remember being powerless. Like, I can remember like not getting visits, phone calls being cut off for the day, or being locked down all day. And so and then I guess my other rock bottom, like, you know, that's my main rock bottom. Like, if I was to go back and use drugs again, like, it won't take long for me to be able to end back up in prison. Like, it's just been that was my path for like 10 years, you know? And then, so for me, then my next rock bottom, which led me to recovery, was, like, I just got deported. And then I got deported, and I became a member of a motorcycle club. So I'm a full-fledged patch member of this motorcycle club, Australians. And what I loved about it was, like, you know, like, as I said, I was quite ambitious. Was like, the first rule was, like, I mean, I went, like, I'm through my 501 community. We came home, and they were like, but all the boys are down here, you know. So that's us, you know. And so I didn't have my family here, you know. I came home by myself, and that was tough. All I wanted was my family. Do you know what I mean? And so I didn't just get that overnight. So then I ended up going to, like, meet the boys of the club, and then their values, their rules. First thing is whānau. Second thing is you can't touch pee. So and I came back anti-meth. Like, I literally got out of prison like, fuck meth, I ain't going back down this road ever again. You know what I mean? And so, not knowing that I'm an addict, I still don't know anything about anything. And so, anyway, I love the values. I was just like, you know, you need to have a job, you need to be motivated, you can't touch pee. And I'm like, fucking sign me up. I don't want this shit.
Jump on board,
you know what I mean? And so, but you know, there was a journey on its own. Not knowing that I was an addict, you know, I ended up becoming, like, going through that journey, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm going through that journey of becoming a member, which was like beautiful. And it was like full of highs and lows. It was tough, but I ended up selling drugs again. You know, like, I guess one thing that when I got exposed to that life, like, I'd only been in New Zealand not long. Like, I'm gonna say 6 months. You know, and like, I came home, got a job straight away. Quite just, you know, trying to, like, save some money so I can get, like, have my kids come visit me. But instantly I knew, because I was riding motorbikes and all that in Australia. That was like, you know, and so instantly I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go down this pathway, because I'm not gonna do drugs or anything, not knowing that I was had a drug problem. And so I started to sell drugs again. Which I was really good, well, in my mind I thought I was good at, but I think I was just really good at feeding my own habit. And it didn't take long before I picked up. So I picked up again, and like, then before I knew it, I got caught using. You know, the boys are like, brother, you're fucking cooked. And I'm like, yeah. And but I knew that I was like, I knew that I didn't want to use, but I just couldn't stop. Once I was picked up again, I couldn't stop again. You know what I mean? Like I was so powerless over it. And I loved the lifestyle, you know, like I was like, everything was coming tenfold, and it was how it was in Australia, you know, and like I really picked up exactly where I left off in Australia, like fully merged, like right, you know, and so, and I couldn't stop, but I knew that I needed to stop.
Yeah.
And I guess that I'd always put like these like markers or like, you know, these D-days where I'm like, bro, this is it. I can't use, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you
As
know,
we do, eh?
yeah, you know, like, and I'm like, this is me. I'm not going to use, and then I put it down, and sure enough, but I still like, you know, thought that I can deal drugs, and then before I know, I'll do like a week up, and then I'm cooked again, and
Yeah.
but anyway, the boys ended up finding, you know, they said to me, Tony, you're cooked, and I'm like, yeah, I'm cooked, bro. But because I knew that I was trying to stop, an associate of mine had done rehab, you know, and I remember sitting there saying, fuck, I need to stop. And she said to me, she goes, bro, and I go, I think I need to go rehab.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm starting to hear that, you know, she went to rehab and done this amazing, and another friend of mine had done rehab and changed her life.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I remember like, but not knowing that they're still cooked, like we were using, you know, but like they'd come around, like my friend who'd gone to rehab, and I'd be like, fuck, I'm thinking I need to stop. I can't stop. You know, I'm like, my mind's, I'm a bit older now, and I've got a newborn baby, and I go, what's some tools?
Yeah.
You know, and then she was just like, you know, and before I even knew it, she told me this Serenity prayer. I'm full blown in addiction. I'm just thinking, oh, that's amazing. But anyway, back to normal. But my rock bottom, and I remember sitting with my friend, and I go, hey, I think I need to go to rehab. You know, I've seen it work amazing for my friend. And I go, what should I do? And she said, go to this rehab. And it was the Salvation Army Bridge program.
Okay.
And then also spoke about NA. And I'm just like, okay. Well, anyway, we'll just leave it at that. Then I ended up going to see the boys, and I said, yeah, I've been using them cooked, but I'm gonna go to rehab.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they were like, solid, brother.
Yeah.
They were like, solid, brother. That's us, you know. And so
Yeah.
anyway, and so that day, I made a commitment that I was not going to use. Because, you know, I just worked hard, and I was all engaged in this life, and I seen that idea of life as success.
Yeah.
You know, I loved it. I loved everything to do with that life. And so I was just like, nah, I ain't touching that shit again. That shit's fucking poison. And then I went and signed up at the Salvation Army Bridge Rehab.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, like I stopped using P that day. But I was still using other substances, you know, like whatever, like weed, alcohol, daily. And then I got into rehab, the Salvation Army Bridge program. I couldn't believe it. You know, like I remember like you know, you get drug tested in there. You can't use, so like I remember they said that you've got to be a week off everything. And so it took me about 6 weeks or something to get in. And I was able to stay off meth, but not on my own.
Yeah.
You know, shout out to my whānau that helped me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I was like, I need to stop. So I went to sleep for a week. And then I ended up starting to get my natural energy back, and to get into the rehab, I'd never been on the benefit. You know what I mean? Except for when you're a 501, they put you on this benefit. They do everything for you. PARS does it, you know. So you get back to New Zealand, you go to PARS, which I love PARS. Then their peer support workers, they like sign you up and help you get back on your feet. But instantly, like, you know, I just want a job. And so I got a job straight away. And so, but to get into rehab, you had to have a doctor's. I hadn't had any of that shit. You know what I mean? And so I signed up at a doctor's, and they said that you need to be on a benefit. Then I went into the working income, and I was like, hey, I need to get on a sickness benefit because I'm going to rehab. So then I'm like, I didn't, and I stopped selling drugs. I didn't, and like, I remember just feeling like amazing. But then I went into, and so I went into rehab, the Salvation Army program, and I was like, although like I'd stopped using drugs, I was still a bit of a thug, you know, and like I still felt like, you know, like I was my ego, and you know, I was a gang member and all this, and so you know, and so, and I treated it like prison, and so you know, look, you know, and I found my people. I found my people, you know, who were like the boys from the hood and other gangs, and so you know, I found my people, and then I didn't last long in there. I got kicked out. And then, but you know, one thing I found out was when I went home on my first weekend leave, and I was around my children, that was the first time that I hadn't had to use drugs and alcohol to feel amazing around my children, and it felt amazing. I think there's this thing that they say like a spiritual awakening, and I think that was my spiritual awakening. I remember we were living in Mangere, and I remember just like my kids are happy, you know, it's this nice sunny day. Today we were going to take the kids on some train rides and just spend quality time and be present.
Special, eh?
It was so special, and I hadn't felt like that forever. You know, like, because up until I went to rehab, I was always on some sort of substance, like marijuana, whatever, you know, even before I picked up meth again, like I'll do other substances, you know, bendering in the weekend, feeling shit. So the weekends are gone, or I'm on runs and all this sort of stuff. But, yeah, I didn't have anything. Like I came home and I was 100% present, and it felt amazing. And so same thing, I continued to go to NA. Like I found NA through the bridge, and you know, and I couldn't believe it. I like seeing people like myself, and although I was quite rumpy, you know, mischievous, I was like, I was like pretty keen on what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, like I was like, fuck, man, I'm starting to feel great, sober, clean, feeling like myself again. And I'm seeing like people like myself getting clean. And I was like, what? You know, at that time, 6 months was huge. And I was like, oh, man. And I'd leave those meetings feeling amazing. But I also knew that like I wasn't healed.
Yeah.
Like I knew that like I there was still more work to do. Like I loved being in the bridge. I fucked it up. I got kicked out.
Yeah.
You know, like 3 days before my graduation. Went home. Same thing. I was lost again.
Yeah.
You know, like I was going to NA, but I didn't know what to do during the day. And so then I signed up at CADS.
Nice.
Just trying to do something.
Yeah.
Because all I knew is that I didn't want to go back to using drugs or alcohol, any.
Yeah.
And I was quite, and because I was quite happy with, I knew, I felt like I was onto something. But you know, then things started to get a bit, like I got complacent. I started hanging out with some boys again. And then before I knew it, I picked up meth again. I relapsed I went to an NA meeting on a Tuesday, and I went home and I used. One of my friends came around and then anyway, I used, and I was just like, fuck. So I then went for an assessment at Wings, and I was just like, hey, I want to do, I think I need some more work. And then they go to me, okay then, but we're a pathway to another pathway. And I said, oh, all good, I'll go back to the bridge. They go, no, we don't think you should go there, you should go to this place called High Ground. And I was like, when I was in the bridge, like I was in there with like people who'd done a lot of rehabs, who knew the system. And I this is my first time ever in the system. All this language was different to me.
Yeah.
All these meetings. And so, but one thing that did come up was like, bro, those people in High Ground, fuck, they're getting smashed all day. Like I'd see them at and like, you know, I'd see them at meetings and they'd be like, I'm like, man, what's up with those people? You know what I mean?
It's like a different breed of people.
Oh my gosh. And so
yeah.
anyway, and I'm just like, and then some people that have been through high ground, they'll be like, bro, you go there, you're up doing chores and it's dark, it's like the army. And I'm just like, so when my case manager at Wings is saying to me, Tony, you need to go to high ground, then we'll take you. Go and have an assessment, then we will take you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I was just like, okay, I went and had an assessment. And I loved what I heard.
Wicked.
You know, like everything that was on offer. And I was just like, well, this is not, you know. And so my journey went on into treatment.
Nice.
And I think that's really, so I fell over. I'm now counting days again. I'm back in meetings. I'm waiting to get into high ground. And then my life's crumbling outside. You know, at home, like, you know, I'm getting complacent. I'm lazy. I'm not doing anything. You know, like I knew I needed structure and to do something. You know, like, and so I couldn't get in there fast enough. I ended up getting into. It's crazy. I ended up finding my way through treatment. Through this place called Grayscade on the North Shore.
Wicked.
And then that was cool. You know, I started to hang out with people like peer support workers that were getting paid to hang out with the boys.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't believe it. You know, taggers as well. You know, we come back. I'll probably
relate to them.
You know, and I was just like, okay. And then, but High Ground hadn't heard of that place, so they were like, nah, you need to go to Wings. When I went to Wings, amazing. You know, like just adapted. You know. But first time that I ever started to get caught on my behaviors, because, you know, I guess although I wasn't using drugs and alcohol, I was still riddled like with behaviors from what I've used to survive. And they didn't serve me. Do you know what I mean? I hurt people. I was a liar, cheat, thief my whole life, and it was very normal. And so I guess my case manager said to me, Tony, you're very manipulative. And I was just like, I actually took offense. I took offense to that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, fucking what? You know what I mean? And I remember going home and like, honestly, I'm in there, like, I'm like very like, although I'm here, I'm loving on all this, but I was very like mischief. Like I'm there like, dressed like not nice, like side bag on and gold on my hands, and I've got like, I'm at the house, I've got like my own little army with boys, and like, you know, when we're walking, like we were in Wings, we're like, fuck the system, you know. And then I'm like, but she could see through me, and she was just like, Tony, you really manipulate. And I'm like, hey. And then the next time, you know, but how we have to turn up to those one-on-ones. And then anyway, the next time she was like, you're quite incongruent. And I'm like, I'd go to a meeting and I'm like, I've been told I'm incongruent, and people are like, listen, they're like, yeah, well, good. About time someone's calling you on this shit. You know what I mean? Because as you can see, we can, you know, and so it was just part of the process of getting well. And then I got kicked out of I got kicked out of here as well. You know, like I think that I was still used to just trying to do things my way. But there were some lessons in this. You know, I was in there trying to like do good, trying to change. Like I really wanted help. And I finally found some help, and I finally found this way, but I didn't know how to surrender. Sorry.
Good.
And then, I didn't know how to surrender. I got kicked out, and I for myself, I learned through the hard way. Like for me, normally how I learn is like through pain, you know, and I can't stand pain, you know, like, you know, and so I got kicked out. Couldn't believe it. I ended up going to stay on my mum's couch. And I remember, and I was just like, fuck, what an idiot. You know what I mean? I can't believe like I was onto something good there.
Yeah.
And then anyway, I got back in the Grace Gate for like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then I ended up in high ground. So for the first time in high ground, like I absolutely had to get fucking honest. And as I said, I'm a charming manipulator that I could sort of like pull the wool. I could, and I learned to survive. Like, no, sir, that wasn't me that done that, and like, I was, I knew how to like sort of get my way. And then on high ground, like I walked in and your own friends are telling on you,
Yeah.
and so I was like, okay. And I'm watching people leave, but, I don't know. I think something made me want to stay, and it was hard. And I guess once I commit to something, I normally give it 100. And then I ended up staying and changing and growing, like you had to grow your hair. You couldn't have short hair as a male. And I had to wear plasters. I used to have tattoos all on me, and I used to have to wear like plasters to cover all my tattoos. And, my identity, and like I started to get real with my feelings and emotions. And actually and I had this beautiful case manager who was beautiful, and she's still in recovery, and so and she was what I needed. She was like a mother figure, like just Tony, like, man. And it's actually because I've been quite hurtful towards women, like, like I'll get in relationships and be unfaithful and then all that sort of jazz, and drag them through the mud and hurt them. And so it was great to be sitting with a wahine and being like, Tony, like, when are you gonna grow up? When are you going to be a man? What's it take to be a man? And I'm like, I don't know what to be a man. This has been my story, No one sort of told me how to be a man. Or like, what do you want to do, Tony? I'm just like, I don't know what I want to do, I ended up graduating high ground. And then same thing. I went out to post. I just followed the pathway.
Yeah.
But I guess, man, I came out a different person. Like I was able to clear some luggage, like family groups and luggage. I was for the first time in my life, I owned all my shit in there.
Yeah.
To my loved ones, and I felt free, and I felt like I'd given a clean slate. So yeah.
Since all of that, have you relapsed?
Nah. That was 2019. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, and thank you. Yeah.
Sitting here now, what does life look like for you? Like, family members back in your life? Tell me about now.
So life, yeah. So since then, it wasn't straightforward, amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
High ground, you don't go to high ground and you're just amazing. But I guess, I came out, I had a baby with someone else. My beautiful daughter, Hallie, she is now 5. And all my other children from Australia, they were here as well.
Wow.
So I guess my main priority was continue what I'm doing because it's working.
Yeah.
So, I ended up being a father. But I remember like walking around, like I was straight out of treatment, and like I remember walking around, and like I started from scratch, like at that time, like I'd left the club through this whole period. I'd left the club and I lost everything. When I went into, I had everything, like everything. Sorry, but I didn't really.
Yeah.
I was lost.
Yeah.
So I had to start from scratch. But I remember just getting out of high ground and post-treatment, walking around being like, man, I wish I had a car. I wish I had a car to go pick my children up. I still had a motorbike though.
Yeah.
I had a motorbike. But I couldn't pick my kids up on a motorbike.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be the dad, as I longed for. And my kids, they loved me, and so I'd have my kids every weekend. I ended up becoming a peer support at like 11 months sober, clean.
Wicked.
I mean, and I just followed that pathway. I was just like, I got out and I was like quite motivated, and I was just like, bro, how do I get a job here? Yeah. And they were like, well, this is what you need to do. You need to go do your peer support, rap, do a CV.
Yeah.
And off the bat, I just done that. And then sure enough, it came with my CV like 6 months, And then I was just like, here's my CV. I think I was about 7 months or something. And then I ended up having an interview and they said, oh, yeah, when the job comes available, one came available. And so for myself, like I went straight from all that sort of journey to working straight as a peer support.
Do you think that has helped
Saved me,
you?
100%,
Yeah.
like, as I said, I struggled going back out to normal before high ground, but yeah. And then the thing is that now all my friends who I was in treatment, I'm starting to make new friends, like, and you know what they say in NA or in recovery, no one wants anything from you except to see you get well.
Yeah.
100%, like I definitely believe it, and so anyway, since then I started working. I have all my children in my life. Oh no, sorry, my older son, he is 20, but he was born when I was 16 and amongst the storm. And so sort of I haven't seen him since he was 5, which I want to.
Yeah.
I keep reaching out to him all the time, but yeah, like life's good, like life's good. Like I'm a different person. I help others, and I think that yeah, you know what, it's done a huge 360. Like before, I guess I was quite estranged from my whānau, since young, since probably like 13, since I went off the rails, like started like when my mum and that split, like I was just surviving from a young age, and so I was quite estranged. Although that we'd come together for tangies or reunions, and uncles, and it was not like we'd actually sit there and connect and be like, what's going on, Neef?
Yeah.
What's going on, uncle? Living life. And so but as I came out, I became like 100% present, and like I really reconnected with my whānau. And so I'd go down home, and I'm very blessed to be like really connected with my whenua. So my mum as you know, my mum and dad got back together, which was fucked up because then my dad ended up in Aussie with us and my mum was over, because my mum can't live in Aussie because she's done too much jail. And so anyway, so when I came home, it was just me and my mum.
Yeah.
And mum, as I said, I was always like, I was a mum's boy, and so my mum's always been there for me, but now my mum's like on the board for my marae. She's got a moko, like she's like this different person. She's on her own journey as well. But I started to go home heaps once I was clean, I'd always go home every now and then for like tangies, and I was very lucky to be connected with my hapu, with my whānau down home. But as I've gotten clean, it's been something next level. Like, I'll go home and I'll be like, actually, like, make the effort, like, want to connect with my nan, want to connect with my I was hungry for like history, knowledge, reconnection. I was starting to really find out who I was, and it was like a proud Māori tāne, with hopes and aspirations, with wanting to be success. And so my whānau started to hear what I was doing, I then was starting to become, I went from being a peer support to starting to become a counsellor, then becoming a counsellor, and then on this journey of just like being like the person that people will call if they were struggling. And so here I was. And so yeah, life's different now, like I'm like a bit of a po in my whānau, like, man, my family are very proud of me. My kids, like, I guess I'm trying to change the cycle because they got put through shit, you know what I mean? Dad going in and out of prison, dad getting deported. I was still very like anti the law, and now I'm like trying to be a role model for them, just like, nah, son, so trying to give them that guidance that I didn't have. And quite often my days are full of like taking kids to sports, like both my boys play sports. My daughter Hallie, she's just started school, and then my other daughter Georgia, she's crack up, so she's autistic, and she's beautiful. And so, yeah, but during the week it's mahi, and the weekends it's children. And yeah, that's pretty much my life. And then, I guess my main drive is just to return home and help my people, rather than, because I'm here helping, doing the mahi up here.
Yeah.
But I want to be down home helping my people on my whenua. I don't know, something's just calling me home.
That's incredible, Tony, and I'm sure that, your ripple effect is going to help so many other people as well, especially down home. I was just reflecting as you were just wrapping up there. If you had the young Tony sitting in front of you today and you were able to have a conversation with him, what would that conversation look like and why?
I guess young Tony would be, ask for help. Don't do it on your own, because I tried to do it on my own and I failed time and time and again.
Yeah.
And be open, because I guess, I can't actually recall if help was there or if I knew how to receive it. But if I could go back and do it all over again, I'd be like, brother, fucking sort your shit out. Listen to these people, they're trying to help you, or ask for help. Stay in school. Do a trade. Say no to drugs. And and I think life would have been, I would have saved a few rock bottoms. But although I think that everything happens for a reason, and I sort of like, we're here now.
Yeah.
We're here now, and I think all these experiences has put me into, because like, if you were to ask me 6 years ago, fucking Tony, you're gonna go to university and all this sort of shit, fuck, no way, like I 6 years ago I was just thinking about wanting to be, well, just stuck in active addiction, trying to survive. But I guess we're here now, and my life's just so different. Yeah.
You should be so freaking proud of yourself, man, because it's not easy to get here, and you do have to keep pushing, and you do have to keep fighting. But as we here in the rooms and in recovery, we are fighting that good fight, and we do it together, and we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
One other thing that I'd love to ask you, that I've been asking everyone else that has come and sat down where you're sitting, is I've been asking people to bring their favorite saying or quote with them that they believe has helped them in their recovery. Is there something that you brought with you today?
So I just want to share something that's really been, I guess, the foundation of my recovery, that's really helped me, and it goes with just find your people. And I guess for me, if I hadn't found my people, I probably would have like faded away. But my people like have kept me accountable, have picked me up when I've been down, have celebrated the highs, and it's been amazing. They've made recovery fun. Recovery's been awesome. And so find your people, whānau.
Awesome. If there's anyone listening today that is going, oh my God, you're amazing, this is awesome, and they are struggling with their mental health and addiction or substance use, where can they look to start receiving help? What advice would you give someone that's looking to start their own journey?
My first and foremost thing would be get to an NA or AA meeting. Those places are full of people changing their lives. But also like, that's all I know. That's what's worked for me. Get to it, or go to higher ground. Yeah. Do the mahi. Yeah.
Oh, wicked. And Tony, before we wrap up, I just want to give you the floor one last time to add in anything that you want to add, and if there's anything that you've missed, or if there's anything that you believe that I was going to ask but I forgot to ask, the floor is yours, my friend.
No, I'm all good. Thanks for your time, and I hope that, I guess, yeah, I hope that this helps, maybe, or if I guess if I can change, anyone can, I guess life doesn't have to be doom and gloom. That, like, if you're there struggling and want to have a beautiful life, like, it's possible. It's just finding out how to do it. And for me, it was around putting down the drugs and alcohol, and and I had to stop breaking the law. I had to sort of like live the full traditions of the program. Like, I guess I don't get them right all the time, but I had to really like stay on this side of the fence, and it's been working out.
Wicked, Tony. Thank you so much for your time. I'm beyond grateful to have had you sit down to share your story this morning. You're amazing, and I can't thank you enough.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks. Goes with just find your people.